This video is only one part of an in-depth review, so check out the rest at thegoodride.com. Thanks for watching. This is the Yes Globe Traditionalist. Next to it is the Yes Standard. And next to that is the Yes Ghost. I rode this with Union Atlas, Burton Kendos, Burton Tourists, and Burton SLXs. I got this in pretty good powder for early season and some decent groomers and some okay groomers, and compared it against the two next to me. To give you a short summary, the Yes Globe Traditionalist is basically the Yes Standard from 2017 before it changed into the model that you see here, but it has a better base and a better core. So it makes a ride that I loved a lot even better. What you get out of this board is true all mountain. And when we say all mountain, that means it's a board that can ride very well as a mountain freestyle ride for your daily driver. But then it has the option to set back and get really good directional float, similar to a free ride board. Maybe not as good, but close. So on those deep powder days, you can get a little directional and a little floaty and a touch surfy, and on those groomer days you can have a mountain freestyle ride. So the setback on board, just like the Standard next to it and the Ghost next to it, is critical to make that a great all mountain board. And that's what this does. Other than edge hold compared to the boards next to it, it is my personal preference, and it matches up really well with my riding style and just has this perfect feel of being great at buttering and being pretty good at carving too, and it balances both of them pretty well. Now when it comes to sizing, all three of these boards fit me pretty well. The new Yes Standard and the Ghost next to it are a little more on the mid-wide side, so they don't quite fit my size 9 boots very well, but going down from the 156 in those models to the 53s that you see here versus this 56, it was a much better comparison surface area wise. You can see the surface area here is 40.5, and on these guys it's 40.6. So it's a real good match in terms of sizing. This meshes well with my size 9 boots, where this Standard is probably a little better for a 10. It's just a wider board for a 153, and same with the Ghost, but it still was very doable. It felt like I had a bigger board than I did, and I actually felt like I was on a bigger board with the 53s than I did on the 56 here. And this did pretty well with my weight too. I expected my 185 to 195 pounds to be a little too much for these boards, but they handled it pretty well. Now when it comes to shape, you have what they call a directional volume twin. The tail has a little less surface area than the nose, but it's the same width, and then it's a twin on side cut. And that's the same for all three of these boards. So what it does is it gives you that twin feel on groomers, but in powder, the tail sinks a little bit more than a normal double ender would. It's not like a tapered directional board that's just going to sink massively down, but it sinks good enough for what it is. And then when it comes to camber profile, all three of these have a different camber profile. This has kind of more of an augmented camrock, or camber between the feet, going to a mellow early rise in the nose and tail, and they're equal on both sides. The Yes Standard has a mellower camber between the feet and a more exaggerated rocker. It doesn't transition slowly like the Globe Traditionalist does. And then the Ghost has modern camber, and all three of these boards react differently. All three of them are stable, but this I felt was like the perfect balance between camber and rocker, and it all depends on what you're into. If you're into a lot of camber, hard carving, then have at it. If you're into the Standard and you want a mellow camber and a lot more buttering, then there you go. But if you want a little balance between the two, it's the Globe Traditionalist. The Yes Ghost is the most unforgiving and the most difficult to skid a turn. It feels the most locked in. The Standard is the most forgiving, the most easy to skid a turn, and this is closer to the Yes Standard, but just a touch more locked in. But still very stable, very forgiving, great in all conditions. It has that same personality underfoot. Now let's get into some flexing here. You can see first off in the nose, pretty decent medium stiff flex. Same here, medium stiff, and same in the tail. It's very consistent throughout and it has a nice twist to it. But what I found is really interesting is this butters really well. It's just the right amount of butterability. Almost the standard that I was on was just a little too buttery. I had to be careful when I leaned into a butter because it would just butter so easy I'd fall right onto my ass or fall forward into my shoulder if I was on the nose. The Ghost took a lot of work, and I would say it's challenging. And this felt, again, kind of just right in the middle. It just buttered well. It felt like it gave me enough return when I came out of it, especially for a hybrid camber board. That's one of the problems sometimes with those boards. They don't really spring out of a butter. And this had decent spring, and I think it's because of that more mellow transition and mellow rocker. I would say of all three of these boards, the Yes Globe Traditionalist had the most easily accessible pop. Even though all three are the same flex, they have different personalities on snow, and because of the different camber profiles, they react differently to ollies. The Ghost took the most work to access though, and that was pretty hard. Now when it came to speed, the Ghost was the winner here of these three. The Standard was the most chattery and bouncy, maybe because of that extra rocker or a little less camber, but it just didn't have that gunny feel. The Yes Globe Traditionalist could hang there with the Ghost, but it wasn't quite the Ghost. Now, when it comes to bass glide, I did feel maybe a touch better glide with the Yes Globe Traditionalist, but all three had pretty good bass glide, especially when waxed, and there was no problem there. When it comes to uneven terrain, they all did a very good job at using that core technology and that construction to kind of absorb things, and all three of them are really good all-day resort rides, except for when it comes to turning through bumps. I would much rather be on the Yes Globe Traditionalist because it's a little more narrow, it weaves in and out of bumps better. But all three of them power over bumps really well at moderate speeds. You don't want to hammer through chunder and micro bumpy snow at high speeds. These just aren't bomber boards, but they're great for moderate all mountain speed. When it comes to edge hold, this is the one place I would love to just see maybe just some new kind of Yes magic or something to give it a little more grip, because in harder snow, the Yes Standard and Yes Ghost did such a better job, and that's why I find myself recommending this Yes Standard to so many intermediate to advanced riders who ride in harder areas. This disruption in the side cut, this mid bite, it's basically an indention at each binding, and it does such a good job at gripping hard snow. I would say the Ghost is a little bit better just because of that camber. It just feels more like that edge is more set, but the Standard is so close. They're both just borderline excellent in hard snow. This can hang in hard snow, but it really starts to let go a little easier, and you have to use more twisty magic to kind of really engage those edges and get that to work. So if you're somebody who's really competent with that, or somebody who doesn't like disrupted side cuts, you're gonna like the Yes Globe Traditionalist a little better. But I would say most riders, like us, like the edge hold on this better. When it comes to turn initiation, this is the fastest. I thought that sizing down from a 56 to a 53 with the Standard and the Ghost would kind of equalize it against the Yes Globe Traditionalist. And I was really surprised in same day comparisons, same boots, same bindings. I would go out and take a few runs, switch a board, take a few runs, switch a board. I couldn't believe how much faster edge to edge this was. When it comes to carving, the Ghost is the winner, but it comes with the consequence of being really locked in and really unforgiving. The standard is the least favorite for carving. If you want to make fun turns, that mellow camber between the feet and that early rise just doesn't make it as much fun as the Ghost. And then the Yes Globe Traditionalist is right in that middle ground. It's not as unforgiving as the Ghost, and it's a little more fun and springy out of a carve than the standard. So it's that nice in-betweener while still being very forgiving. So I like that the best in terms of just being a forgiving, mellow ride. When I was feeling aggressive and having good carving moods, the Ghost was my favorite because it just springed out of a turn so well. And it really matches up with an aggressive all mountain rider the best. Now when it comes to powder, they're all pretty good. And that's because they all have slam back inserts, they call them, but they're set back inserts. You need a full-size disc. These are 40mm offset inserts. So you can't use mini discs with these. But if you have a full-size disc like the Union Atlas or the Union Force or any Burton Reflex binding, you can set this back and get really good directional float. All three of them have the same directional float, but as you would guess, the Yes Standard had the best float in powder. The Ghost had good float, way better than I thought, but it was a shade less than the Standard. And the Traditionalist was right in between again, but all three of them were really fun in their own way. I liked planing a little more and just kind of cruising with the Standard and the Ghost. But what I really liked about the Globe Traditionalist is it felt more quick and slashy. This would be my Tree Cheetah, and this is the board that I would want to own. When it comes to riding switch, park, getting the mountain freestyle side of things on here, the Ghost is obviously the most technical and the most unforgiving. The Standard is the most forgiving, buttery, and playful. If you plan on dabbling with some jibs and maybe more like park-oriented riding, but still want to be ready for that mountain and set it back, the Standard's going to be your call, and especially if you like buttering. If you want a nice combination of both of these, then you have the Globe Traditionalist. And what I loved about this was it's such a fun board for pipe, as long as it's not too hard. I love riding spring soft pipe, and this is one of my favorite boards because it turns so quick. It's just so easy to ride pipe if you're not a really strong rider like myself in the pipe. And it approaches kickers really well, it lands really well, it butters, it does a little bit of everything. Maybe not the best on jibs compared to the Standard, but better than the Ghost. It's just a really balanced ride for in and out of the park. It shines a little more on the mountain, but it's still very competent in the park. And overall, it's just so nice to see this back. And other than edge hold, it just kind of had everything I wanted. It just never got too unforgiving when you got off your game, like the Ghost can. And it just didn't feel too mellow and buttery and kind of unfun to, like, sometimes the Standard can be a little not as much fun to turn and to carve as the Traditionalist. And so it's just that, you know, it's just the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This one was just right. All our reviews are a best effort, objective opinion from an average rider's perspective. There's no brand oversight, and we're free to say whatever we want. We send back everything unless it's a favorite, then we ask to keep those or straight up buy them. Now, if you need advice, fill out the eHarmony profile in the Contact Us section of the site. It's the only way I can help you properly. If you want to support us, and if what we reviewed appeals to you, it helps if you buy through our links. So, thanks for watching.